watch out, because there are some pieces of the puzzle that suddenly don't seem to fit.
Iran has responded by attacking the Al Udeid air base that the United States has in Qatar. It was a symbolic strike, communicated in advance, and with no intention to cause harm. In this way, the regime of the Ayatollahs came to say that, for now, they are turning the page. For now. But that is not the whole story, and certainly the Persian drama has not yet ended. Stay tuned to everything we are going to tell you next.
After almost 40 hours of mission time, the B-2 stealth bombers, the tip of Uncle Sam's Imperial Spear, were returning home. Meanwhile, Trump appeared at the White House. The president was very clear and very forceful. He spoke no more and no less of the total destruction of Iran's nuclear capabilities. But it's better if you hear it from him directly.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Tonight I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
Completely destroyed. The president left no room for doubt. And in fact, that's exactly what the White House kept insisting on loud and clear, at least for a few hours. Because suddenly, that statement wasn't so clear anymore. Vice President J.D. Vance himself began to walk it back, and fast. But again, better if you hear it for yourselves.
Well, John, what was severely damaged versus obliterated, I'm not exactly sure what the difference is. What we know is that the nuclear program back substantially. And again, John, I don't want to get into very sensitive intelligence about what we know. They are much further away from a nuclear program today than they were 24 hours ago. That was the objective of the mission, to destroy that Fordow nuclear site and, of course, do some damage to the other sites as well.
So, why the sudden shift in tone and nuance? Well, basically because of this.
Iran reports it evacuated materials prior to U.S. strikes on nuclear sites.
And also because of this.
Where is Iran's uranium? Search continues for 400-kilogram stockpile.
Because at this point, while the logistical success of Operation Midnight Hammer still seems technically undeniable, however, now serious doubts about whether President Trump was simply too hasty or didn't really care about telling the whole truth, because many experts now suspect the actual outcome of the operation may have been far murkier. I'm sure many of you saw it on social media. It spread like wildfire. And keep in mind, the official battle report isn't the only confusing signal coming out of the White House. Now, the US stance toward Tehran seems to have landed in clear contradiction. Why do I say that? Well, because after bombing Iran, the Trump administration began insisting that the US is not at war with the country, that the attack was just a one-off, a precise, limited strike. The logic behind this strategy? To downplay the operation and avoid provoking any suicidal act of retaliation.
No, we're not at war with Iran, John. We're at war with Iran's nuclear program, and I think the president took decisive action to destroy that program last night.
But of course, then came Trump. And suddenly, he did something he hadn't done until now. Something that directly contradicts both the position he had held up to that point and the stance of his own administration. I'm talking about a mention of regime change. Take a look.
It's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? Mega.
So, to sum up, we now have a White House that's no longer so sure the operation was the overwhelming success it initially promised and announced. A White House that seems uncertain about its next move, while Israel continues doing its thing, ramping up the pressure and pushing hard to double down on Iran. And of course, even though part of the team is on vacation, here at VisualPolitik, we've been asking ourselves some key questions. What really happened? What was the actual technical scope of the attack? What is Washington hoping for now? Will there be an Iranian retaliation? And what the hell is going on in the Strait of Hormuz? Well, we're going to break all of that down and more right now. Fuel up, let's get rolling. Remember when self-driving cars felt like sci-fi? Today, 400,000 plus Teslas drive themselves daily. In just 3 years, AI adoption surged 270%, and early adopters are now seeing 15% higher productivity. AI is no longer the future. It's already here. The real question is, are you keeping up or just watching from the sidelines? That's why we at VisualPolitik recommend this 2-day AI training by Outskill. It's designed to take you from beginner to advanced AI professional in just 16 hours. It's the world's first AI AI-focused education platform backed by renowned AI investors and founders. This 2-day program offers 16 hours of live AI training, happening this weekend on Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. EST. It's a paid training valued at $895, but exclusively for the VisualPolitik audience, you can attend it completely free. Use the link in the description to save your seat now before it expires. In this training, you'll gain in-depth knowledge on various topics, including 20+ AI tools to build AI toolkits, prompt engineering to achieve incredible results, using AI in Excel and creating professional presentations effortlessly, data analysis without coding, creating stunning images and videos using AI tools, building tools with AI without writing code, automating your work to save time and boost productivity, developing AI agents, and that's just the beginning. Over 4 million people from 40+ countries have already participated, including people in marketing, HR, tech, freelancing, you name it. Grab your free seat now using the link in the description. And don't forget to join the WhatsApp group for updates. The intro call starts Friday at 10 a.m. EST. And now, back to the topic. The United States Armed Forces carried out an unprecedented military operation, striking 3 key facilities in Iran's nuclear program. Various experts point out that the Pentagon has been planning potential strikes on these plants for years, and that the final execution looked like this.
The strike operation began nearly 18 hours before the bombs actually hit, when 7 B-2 stealth bombers took off from Missouri from a base deep in the heart of the United States. After reaching the target area, these aircraft flew through a safe corridor previously cleared by Israeli Air Force attacks on Iranian defense systems. This way, 14 GBU-57 bunker buster bombs were dropped on the Fordo and Natanz plants, where Iran operates thousands of centrifuges to enrich uranium. Meanwhile, the Isfahan facility was struck by Tomahawk missiles launched from the Indian Ocean.
Now, VisualPolitik community, these technical details about how the operation was carried out were provided by General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. However, when he and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth began taking questions from the press in the room, that's when doubts started to emerge, and of course, quickly spread across social media.
I know that battle damage is of great interest. Final battle damage will take some time, but initial battle damage assessments indicate that all 3 sites sustained extremely severe damage.
The battle damage assessment is ongoing, but our initial assessment, as the chairman said, is that all of our precision munitions struck where we wanted them to strike and had the desired effect, which means especially in Fordo, which was the primary target here, we believe we achieved destruction of capabilities there.
At first, no one questioned the success of the operation. In fact, in Washington, officials went as far as to declare that the end of Iran's nuclear program was a done deal. However, as the hours went by, more and more doubts began to surface. According to various satellite images obtained and analyzed by sources close to the Pentagon, the bunker-busting bombs did in fact penetrate the surface of Iran's nuclear facilities. The issue, however, is that the damage, or even the total implosion of these bases, is hard to verify due to their underground structure. Now, some new hypotheses are emerging, suggesting that the bombs may have failed to destroy the Fordo facility altogether. Even Israeli intelligence claims that this is basically what happened. The plant suffered significant damage, but it was not destroyed. That said, even if they didn't manage to destroy it, this outcome was already suspected as a possibility. In other words, it wasn't unexpected that they might fail to completely wipe out these sites. Take, for example, what this recent report from the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington had to say just a few days ago.
Options for targeting Iran's Fordo nuclear facility. The GBU-57 may not fully destroy the facility, so regardless of Trump's decision, Fordo will likely remain a challenge for non-proliferation efforts.
So basically, there are growing suspicions that Trump exaggerated during his speech at the White House, that he got carried away and, instead of telling the truth, said exactly what suited him best, that the mission had been an unqualified, historic success. Now, this is where a heated debate has emerged, with 2 completely opposing camps. On one side, those who argue that the US attack didn't really accomplish much, that it failed to destroy the facilities, and that Iran might even have another secret site where it could continue its nuclear efforts. We will get into that in more detail shortly. On the other side, those who claim that, despite everything, the operation did in fact achieve its goal, which, honestly, we think it's a more likely scenario, in part because of this.
The production of nuclear weapons depends primarily on the ability to enrich uranium. Iran had more than 15,000 centrifuges up and running in the targeted plants. And here's the key point. These machines operate at over 50,000 revolutions per minute. In other words, even the slightest disturbance can throw off their alignment, ruin their calibration, and render them completely useless.
To put it simply, centrifuges are highly sensitive precision machines designed to function under extremely stable conditions of temperature, pressure, and humidity, which means the shockwave of the explosions, a power outage, or both could have easily wrecked them. A failure in the ventilation systems could also cause serious damage. And where were several of the bombs dropped? Right into the ventilation system inlets. So, beyond Trump's bold statements and promises, the actual technical goal of the mission may not have been to completely destroy the facilities, but rather to cripple Iran's enrichment capabilities and thereby delay its nuclear program, which is basically what J.D. Vance himself has also said.
I think it'll be many, many years before the Iranians can develop a nuclear weapon.
And he's not alone. Many experts are defending this very same position.
With the type and amount of munitions used, it will likely set back the Iranian nuclear weapon program 2 to 5 years.
But right here, another question comes up. What if Iran moved the centrifuges somewhere else?
We can reasonably assume that the centrifuges in Fordo and Natanz were destroyed, but we still don't know if those were all the centrifuges they had.
Well, this is one of the key points in the whole story. In principle, it's very difficult to dismantle these centrifuges and recalibrate them in a different location. Not impossible, but definitely a very complex operation. And what would truly be hard to believe is that Israel didn't detect and attack the transport of those machines. Take a look. This image was taken on June 19th, just hours before the B-2s took off from Missouri. In fact, we can see unusual truck activity around the Fordo facility, the main nuclear stronghold targeted by the American bombers. Well, according to US and Israeli intelligence, these sites were closely monitored to detect any attempt to evacuate or relocate assets before the attack.
Well, look, we don't. No one will know for sure for days, but I doubt they moved it because you really can't move anything right now, and they can't move anything right now inside of Iran. I mean, the minute a truck starts driving somewhere, the Israelis have seen it and they've targeted it and taken it out.
In other words, even though Iran claims it evacuated its personnel and moved its technology just before the attack, Western intelligence suggests otherwise. In fact, the more sensible assumption is that Iran chose to shelter its equipment, knowing that Israeli air superiority would have left any convoy in an extremely vulnerable position. And this leads us directly to another question. Sure, Iran's technological chain for building nuclear weapons may have been significantly damaged, but what about the raw material? Because another question that neither the White House nor the Pentagon has been able to answer is, what the hell happened to the enriched uranium stockpiles the Ayatollahs have been bragging about? Why is there no nuclear contamination if we're talking about kilos and kilos of enriched uranium being bombed? Is Iran keeping an ace up its sleeve? Well, stay tuned.
Hammer or boomerang?
One of the biggest concerns about attacking nuclear facilities was, logically, the environmental risk that could be unleashed. Because, of course, attacking nuclear components usually means radiation. However, so far, neither the environmental agencies in the Persian Gulf nor Western monitoring systems seem to have detected any abnormal radiation levels. Wasn't the whole target area supposed to be flooded with massive radiation? Well, not necessarily. It is possible that Iran had its enriched uranium stored in special containers, and that even if the facility was destroyed, the uranium was buried. So the truth is that this brings us to another key point we need to consider. All official sources now indicate that the real goal of this attack was to eliminate nuclear proliferation technology, not to destroy the regime's uranium stockpiles. Stockpiles that the Ayatollahs still have safely stored away in a facility in the city of Isfahan. This is something that Vice President Vance has explicitly explained in recent hours.
We're going to work in the coming weeks to ensure that we do something with that fuel, and that's one of the things that we're going to have conversations with the Iranians about. But what we know, John, is they no longer have the capacity to turn that stockpile of highly enriched uranium to weapons-grade uranium, and that was really the goal here. Uranium is not that difficult to come by, John, but enriching uranium up to the point of a nuclear weapon, that is what the president put a stop to last night.
This partly explains why Iran keeps insisting over and over that it has safeguarded its energy reserves, which, as I've said, appears to be completely true.
U.S. officials concede they don't know whereabouts of Iran's uranium stockpile, according to 2 Israeli officials with knowledge of the intelligence that Iran had moved equipment and uranium from the site in recent days.
Some even claim that US and Israeli intelligence deliberately allowed uranium to be removed in the days leading up to the attack, possibly transported in steel drums, even in car trunks. Why did they allow it? To avoid radiation, to keep sanctions and pressure on the Ayatollahs, to leave the door open for negotiations. I guess it'll still be a while before we know the full truth. In any case, everything suggests that it's reasonable to believe that the strikes by both Israel and the United States have seriously damaged Iran's nuclear program, and that, in the best case scenario for Tehran, it would now be delayed by many years. Although we might also soon find out that things didn't go so well, because there's another risk. Think about it. Over the years, Iran has developed a level of know-how and expertise that obviously hasn't disappeared with the attacks. They could also have taken preventative measures, for example by installing centrifuges in clandestine facilities. In that case, Tehran could now attempt to rush toward building a bomb using secret, dispersed facilities scattered across the country. It would be harder, maybe slower, but still feasible. In fact, we can't forget that India, Pakistan, and North Korea successfully developed nuclear weapons programs in secret, despite heavy US surveillance and restrictions. And this is exactly what people close to Ayatollah Khamenei have been hinting at in recent days.
Even if the nuclear sites are destroyed, the game is not over. The enriched materials, indigenous knowledge, and the policy will remain.
Which also seems to be Israel's reading of the situation.
They have enough enriched uranium somewhere, and they took some advanced centrifuges somewhere to one day enable them to go for a nuclear device. The program is not completely destroyed, no matter what the Americans say.
And in fact, this could be a crucial point. If Israel and the United States are not confident they can fully eliminate the nuclear program, perhaps the best strategy is simply to apply intense pressure to force the Ayatollahs to back down. That, or destroy their air defenses, to be able to launch attacks whenever necessary, which is exactly what Israel is doing. In any case, what's now beyond any doubt is that whether this attack was more or less successful, it was, as we've explained here at VisualPolitik, a deeply erratic decision. It was carried out in a pretty improvised manner, without the backing of the intelligence community. Just look at how Trump publicly overruled them.
Well, then my intelligence community is wrong. Who in the intelligence community said that?
Your Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard.
She's wrong.
How the hell can the president have more information than his own intelligence services? Where did that information come from? From another country? Maybe Israel? But does it make sense for the president of the United States to trust a country with clear interests in the conflict more than his own intelligence community? And that's not even the worst part. The worst part is that in Washington, there was a certain consensus not to join Israel's campaign, and instead to pursue the diplomatic route, until Netanyahu pushed hard and Trump gave in. Yes, the operation was effective, and now the United States could be facing numerous consequences. But if the doubts are confirmed, then beyond any reprisals, we could be looking at a failure not seen since the botched rescue of American hostages in Iran, a failure that likely cost Jimmy Carter his re-election. VisualPolitik community, Trump's constant zigzags are causing events to spiral in a pretty chaotic way. But what can I tell you? Even inside his own cabinet and among the MAGA base, people are starting to feel completely lost. In any case, the most important thing now to keep this conflict from escalating further is that Iran does not retaliate. Because even if a retaliation would be almost suicidal, it could still turn the world upside down.
At this stage, Iran has carried out a cosmetic strike against the U.S. airbase in Qatar. A limited attack announced in advance and one that caused no damage. For the time being, it seems things will not go any further, at least for now.
There are also strong rumors about movements in the Strait of Hormuz, where I'm sure many of you saw this headline.
Iranian parliament votes in favor of closing the Strait of Hormuz.
Although that's a bit misleading, because in Iran, the parliament isn't that powerful. Then, on the other hand, NBC reported that before the attack, the Iranian regime made it very clear to Trump, if you attack Iran, we will activate sleeper cells. We have prepared to strike inside the United States. Just yesterday, right here on VisualPolitik, we already told you that hybrid warfare is the greatest threat.
اونچه که او در این زمینه ضربه خواهد خورد به مراتب بیشتر است از اونچه که ایران ممکنه صدمه بخوره. صدمه آمریکا اگر ورود در این میدان بشه، ورود نظامی در این میدان بکنه، صدمه جبران ناپذیری خواهد بود بدون تردید.
We will see what happens, and we will keep you posted. For now, what we can say is that the US attack largely achieved its objective, but the nuclear threat has not gone away, and Israel will continue striking Iran's military capabilities. With that said, now the question is for you. What would you do if you were Iran? What should your response be? What do you think Washington should do? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments, and let's open the debate. And if you found this video interesting, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to VisualPolitik. Thank you so very much for watching. All the best. I'll see you next time.